This episode of Ludonarrative Dissidents is brought to you by Max Nesterowicz. Thanks, Max. Check out Relatable Roles, an actual play podcast Max runs that features games like Merkborg and Delta Green. I've guested on it, and it's a very fun game. It's a very fun show. Now, enjoy this episode. Hello, and welcome to Ludonarrative Dissidents podcast. This is season 3, episode 3, and we're talking about Savage Worlds Adventurers Edition, which is a popular universal system that has been out for over 20 years now. It first came out in 2003. The most current edition of the game, I believe, came out in 2018, and that's the one we're going to be focusing on. Obviously, we might be mentioning other versions of the game, editions of the game, but yeah, it's a game for savage role-playing game, very pulp, very cinematic, and very versatile, as the game claims. And with me, as always, are my co-hosts, Greg Stolze and James Wallace. Hello.
Hello.
Surprisingly enough, I'm the one with the most play experience with the game, I think, unless, Greg, you've been running a lot of, or playing a lot of Savage Worlds lately?
No, I'm afraid not. I mean, This is your shtick, man. You're the one who actually plays games, and James and I are the intellectuals who talk out our asses. And I think this this dynamic and this two ass to one genuine person dynamic really works for us. I think that's what's got us to season 3.
Yes, as you know, those who can do, those who can't pontificate, and that's Greg and Mike.
Can you expand on that, James?
Gladly. Hour and a half. I'll go for it.
Yeah, we could add this to our behind the scenes channel that we've added now to our Discord. Yeah. So yeah, those who can podcast about it. That's the real truth these days. Yeah, so I have been running a Savage Worlds campaign for the last 6 months or so, probably a little more now.
And which setting?
Savage Rifts.
Oh yes.
Yeah, go big or
I mean,
go home.
I knew. Yeah. I mean, I recognized it when you told me. But yes, some of our listeners may not have been aware that you were savage rifting. And I can see how this would be a pretty good match for that sort of... What I remember about rifts is there's a lot, and that it's all got it... There's like 10,000 things each, and each of those things has their own thing going on. And you can be a book burning cyborg from one universe, hanging out with a fantasy knight from another universe, and you're going to rescue your buddy, the half vampire hunter from a third universe, because he's the only one who knows how to work the espresso machine from a fourth universe. Have I got rifts down? And there's trans-dimensional slavers and giant mecha. And
more chrome, really. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Rifts is the kitchen sink of adolescent power fantasies, as is how I've always thought of it. There's a movie, a low-budget sci-fi adventure movie called The Eliminators made in the 80s, of course, starring a mandroid, a ninja, a scientist, and a guy whose main qualification is he owns a boat.
I'm gonna guess that. Wait, which one's the girl? The scientist or the ninja?
Scientist.
That was gonna be my guess, but I'm like, there's an outside chance.
And they fight a time-traveling mad scientist. Anyways, that's Rifts in a nutshell. And Savage Worlds is a good role-playing game for it. So it's published by Pinnacle Entertainment Group, and it was first released in 2003. And as it describes, Savage Worlds is everything you need to play narrative or miniatures-based games with quick, simple rules for everything from combat dramatic tasks. It is focus on their actions to keep the action going, the story rocketing along. So yeah, it is a universal system but aimed at what a lot of people call cinematic role-playing game, but like not just movies, but also like prestige or adventure TV shows, comics, video games, things where charismatic people solve moderately difficult problems.
With massive set pieces involving a lot of special effects.
Yes.
Yeah. The key words, I think, and it's on the back of the book, and they repeat it a number of times in the rule book, is fast, furious, and fun. Mm-hmm. And I think that, the rules as given here do try to bring that out. I have some quibbles with the rules as presented, but as I've said already, I think twice this season, there's a difference between critiquing the book and critiquing the game. And I think the game is greater than the rule book in this particular case. I think the rule book does not actually do justice to what Savage Worlds actually is. But we'll come on to that.
Okay. My answer to what it does is the full trad gaming experience with pulp flavor. As I was reading this, it was interesting for me because I kept seeing it solve problems that I solved in Rain. Mm-hmm. And if I was writing a game now, I'm not sure I would feel the need to solve every single one of these problems in the same way that SWADE does. I'm going to call it SWADE because Savage Worlds, Adventurers
Edition. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to call it SWADE because
or Adventure Edition. Actually,
I believe they call it SWADE. It's in the name of the PDF.
Who doesn't like SWADE?
Because they had one of their previous editions was like Explorers Edition. I think that was the first version of it. So that's how they name edition.
Swede?
Swex.
Oh yeah, Swex does not sound great.
And then Savage Worlds Deluxe.
SWAD.
Yeah.
Come on, man, let's play SWAD. No,
Savage Worlds Deluxe Explorers Edition, Sweetie. That's
Come on, Sweetie.
SWADE is definitely an improvement. You have to give them credit for that.
So I mean, well, they've had since 2003 to get their branding in a headlock. And man, you said 2003, and my first thought was, oh God, we were so innocent then.
I don't know. It felt old-fashioned to me. As you say, a lot of the problems that it's solving, to me, felt like problems that really had been solved by the 90s in a lot of cases. A lot of 80s role-playing games have got past these kind of problems, which implies very strongly these are not problems that we would need solving, but people coming in from a different role-playing system. And I think you all know which role-playing system I'm talking about, though actually Palladium is probably number 2 on that list, would need solved, because these are not things that have come up for them before.
What do you mean by a problem that it solves? Because what I mean by a problem that it solves is a lot of tactical, is finding that sweet spot of tactical fiddliness where it's like, okay, I'm going to make decisions in the many fights that this system assumes I will be having, and I want my decisions to matter, but I also want my decisions to not unlock a Pandora's box of subsystems that drag on and bog down.
Exactly that. And with no power creep as well, no ever escalating levels of power that just bring in more and more twiddly bits and stuff that needs to be referred to in the rulebook. I would not describe this as an elegant system, but it's a damn sight more elegant than the market leader and Palladium.
It's tight.
The core mechanic is gorgeous. The way you put your characters together and then the way that you play them is so sweet and could be expressed on a single sheet of paper and should be.
I don't know that I'd go to gorgeous, but
this is not a long rulebook. It's 220 pages, and I genuinely felt it could have been a lot less. And at the same time, it's interesting. It could have also been a lot more. Because it's a generic system of rules, they are kind of not hidebound. They are bound by how much they can put in there because they want to sell source books. But for example, the character ancestries, which other games would call races or histories or whatever, your character class.
I like the word ancestries. I like it. I'm like, let's ditch baggage and... some people who are going to be bothered are going to be less bothered. God bless. And it's more accurate.
True. Good point. Unless you're talking about cyborgs or robots, rather. And literally the first character class is kind of robots. But they've only got about 10 in the book. And you've got all your standard post-Tolkien fantasy races. You've got people who've got wings, people who come from underwater, robots,
half folk,
humans.
I'm like, man, you're stretching with that
folk.
one.
Oh god,
half
yes.
folk. What's the other half?
I emitted an audible groan at that point.
They're half folk and half cheese.
Yeah. But it felt like, here are some examples of the race, of the ancestries your characters can have.
There you go.
Rather than, here is enough to build out whatever fantasy world you want. It's a sample pack. And yet some of it, I mean, the combat system is ridiculously complete. It is one of those games where you go, when a game shows you what it is, believe it. The the abilities chapter is 24 pages, of which 4 pages are not combat. It's the rules chapter. That's the one. It is very much a combat system, and it actually says specifically there's a Wikipedia entry for it, which sums up, which first of all emphasizes the Fast Furious fun thing, but also makes the point that this is a combination role-playing game and tactical miniatures tabletop system. And if you read through the combat system thinking about it, just yes, it absolutely is. This has been devised for use with miniatures. Not a start. Apparently, that's, if you look at it, the free part of the free download is there are cut out little cardboard minis for you. There are templates at the back of the PDF, the rulebook, for your explosions of different diameter.
This is all just a sinister plot to sell standees.
And it's, by the standards of minis games, it's actually pretty tight in terms of the amount of rules it takes up. But it is very centered around combat, the entire rulebook. But then so is D&D, and so is Rifts.
And simulating things. This is, and when you said that, the rules chapter is 24 pages, but that doesn't really count the advanced toolkit, right?
True.
That was the chapter where they're like, okay, so here's how you do a chase. And I'm like, okay, this seems like a cool way to do chases. And they're like, and here's how you do, ship on ship combat. And here's how you do, okay, so we're back to combat, point James. But, here's how you do a courtroom drama. It clearly is not meant to be a courtroom drama kind of game. It's clearly meant to be a car chase gunfight kind of game. That's fine. It knows its nature.
You can combine the two, It's, who hasn't had a court case where a car busts through the walls, followed immediately by several other cars? And it's worth saying, you say, here's how you do a chase. There's 9 pages of how you do a chase. It's not short on rules. The core mechanic is really elegant and everything bolts onto that. But there is an awful lot of explaining how to do stuff in probably more detail than it needs.
But the nice thing about that core mechanic is that it's very easy for GMs to ignore the other stuff and just use that core mechanic for whatever their setting is. Because
I was just going to, if it was me, that's all I would use. I would use that core ability, test mechanic. And we should talk about that. We should talk about how that works.
And I kind of say in practice, that's what I do. The core mechanic is rolling a die. And and the die number depends on what your skill or attribute is and what you're testing. And it'll go from a D4 to a D12. And usually you want to target number 4. Now, the interesting thing is wild cards, which are characters who have names and, player characters are wild cards. Important NPCs are wild cards. They also get to roll a D6.
Yeah, let's just say it outright. Let's say the quiet part loud. The cool people.
The cool people, the speaking line characters.
Yes. The ones who get their SAG-AFTRA card.
Yeah. So you roll and you use the default target number is a 4. And so on a D4 that you need a 4. But there's an exploding dice mechanic, which is very important and sort of the core of this game. If you roll the highest number on a die, you roll again and keep adding on, and it keeps exploding. And this includes most checks, not every single check in the game, but it does noticeably include damage dice, and which can lead to an interesting thing because of the health system, which we'll get into in a little bit. But it's a very swingy system, but there's no upper end. And although there is the critical mechanic is if you get a 4 above your target number, if like you get an 8, you get what they call a raise, and the raise is an improvement on whatever you did. It can be extra damage. It can be so it's contextual based on like what you're trying to do. And then, of course, there are modifiers like if it's really difficult, you get a negative to your adjusted number. Like if you're if you have a -2 and you're rolling on a D4, you'd have to roll 4, then roll at least a 2 to get a 6 in order to get down to 4, if that makes sense. So, yeah, it's a very interesting system and very easy to teach. Yeah.
What's interesting about the explosion thing is that the worse you are at a skill or attribute, the more likely you are to explode. Yeah. But the less likely that explosion is to really matter. So if I have a D10 in one skill and a D4 in another, my chances of exploding in the thing I'm not very good at are much higher. But still, if I just explode once, I'm not even at 10 points, which is what I would start at if I exploded where I was good. So your bread and butter skills, you're going to be reliable with. And it's like, oh, this is the thing I'm good at. And I'm good at the thing I'm good at. And everything else, you're just going to kind of wallow around until you pop off. Is that how it went? Was that your experience with this system doing Savage Rifts? Is that okay? I made an example character based on a William Hope Hodgson short story I read recently, in which the explanatory material about the author said, oh, and he was a bodybuilder. And I'm like, what? The author of this classic of transcendentalist horror, The House on the Borderlands was also fucking jacked. And then you see it in the story where one of the most effective characters is the captain of the ship, who is described as being this hulking mass of illiterate muscle and just not very smart and not very insightful, but he could swing a 14-foot long oak oar into a monster like you wouldn't believe. Strong recommend for The Derelict by William Hope Hodgson. He was also a sailor, so, that comes out. But, so I tried to make this captain in SWADE. And yeah, I'm like, okay, if this guy hits something, his chances of hitting are pretty good. His strength is off the chart. Well, not off the charts, but pretty deep into the charts. I'm like, if he hits you, you're going to stay hit. But a lot of the things that you would not expect him to be good at are anything involving thought or noticing or, that Call of Cthulhu nerd shit. But when he does get a success on that, it's probably going to be an explosive success because he's rolling mostly D4s for think meat action. And to succeed at all, he's going to explode. So suddenly it's like, oh, well, if I succeed, I have a 25% of exploding again. Whereas my chance of exploding, if I just hit someone with my giant ham hock of a fist, is only 10%.
Well, it's actually better than that because remember, you're always using the wild dice. You always get a D6.
Oh, that's right.
So it's even better than that of succeeding. So characters do succeed on basic things most of the time, as long as they're trained. Like if you're untrained in something, then you have a -2 if you're even allowed to make the roll. So in practice, characters usually succeed at things most of the time.
So the question, it's, are you going to have a success where a pedestrian success or an action movie moment success?
Yeah. And that's, what you get. We've had definitely game sessions where somebody's like, oh, I'm just going to, it's like, all right, make your stealth check. All right. Okay. I'm just, no one can perceive me anymore. Like, I'm just like,
I own the
night. I needed a 6 and I got a 30,
all the guards are wondering what happened to their underpants. It's a real situation over here.
The great thing about the exploding die mechanic, people talk about like natural 20s and natural ones in D&D and like how they're these ridiculous things. But like in D&D, like a natural 20 or a natural 1 isn't necessary. Like natural ones, that critical vulnerables aren't even like a default rule. It's more of a house rule. But like a natural 20 is usually just double damage or max damage. There's an upper limit to what a natural 20 can do in D&D. But there's no upper limit in Savage Worlds, so you can have the peasant one-shotting the ancient dragon by shooting, just one arrow into its one weak spot and rolling, like a 30 or 40 on a damage roll. It's very unlikely, but it makes, D&D characters and villains especially can become basically indestructible or able to tank a lot of things, and nothing in Savage Worlds is that tough.
Including you.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
We'll get to that.
If you're fighting, if you're fighting another wild card.
Mm-hmm. But
I suppose even not. Yeah. You can always get the mouse that roared.
Yeah. But yeah, the exploding
improbable, but yeah, it could happen.
It creates more of a natural 20 effect than actual natural 20s in D&D do. So like it's doing what people make so many D&D, like D&D memes and D&D jokes wouldn't exist without the natural 20, because that's like half the jokes, right? It's like, oh my God, I rolled a natural 20. How improbable. But like Savage Worlds, like, yeah, no, you could just roll a 30 or a 40 on your target number 4 roll.
Your arrow not only has killed the dragon, but has somehow cut it into marketable cuts of dragon beef.
Yeah. And I think it really pairs well with the, because the health system is one of the things I really like about Savage Worlds, but it can be a big turnoff for a lot of players because in Savage Worlds, characters have 3 wounds. And the way damage work is you have a toughness rating based on your character's vigor, modified by armor or, other necessarily edges or powers or whatever. And so if a damage roll hits that target number, it gets up to 3 over that target number, you're shaken. But if it gets 4 to 7, you take a wound. If you get 8 through 11, you get 2 wounds. If you get 12 or more, it's like 3 wounds. Your characters only have 3 wounds. So your characters can be one-shotted by one really good roll from that one random, stormtrooper can just, drill a hole in your Jedi's, head.
God, I want to see that in a Star Wars. That's the only thing that would get me back to Star Wars at this point is some Jedi just out there arrogantly Jediing it up and some schmuck stormtrooper.
So you're the guy who just rewatches Order 66 scene in Revenge of the Sith. So like in my Savage Rifts campaign, the characters have become sort of glass cannons where they've gotten bigger and bigger guns and spells and weapons to one-shot very, very tough monsters, but like they haven't really bothered with the armor as much. So anything that can survive that can one-shot them unless they spend the meta currency of this game, bennies, which you can spend to soak damage rolls.
You're dying, son. Time to call Dr. Benny.
And like any good meta currency, players will spend them willy-nilly at the beginning of the game without any thought of like, well, we're trying to track down this really dangerous vampire or monster. I don't need these bennies. Let's just spend them like
But I'm gonna spend a benny on winning my bet that that donkey's gonna fart in the next 10 minutes.
Yeah. So it creates a really interesting dynamic in the game where characters are skilled and competent and likely to succeed and most of the things they do, but they aren't superheroes. I mean, even if they are superheroes, like there's still a vulnerability to them that like D&D characters, once you get the right spells and magic items, like a lot of D&D characters are nigh indestructible outside of, equally, BS boss encounters, right?
Yeah. Tarask or GTFO.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think the thing is, D&D characters always, particularly at higher levels, feel invulnerable. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think there is a degree to, I can't remember which one of the earlier games it was, where there were actually quite a lot of get out of jail free mechanics. Morkborg, which appears to be deadly, but actually there's a number of things you can do to almost certainly avoid death. And I suspect that's the situation here. But you feel vulnerable. You always feel you could be one-shotted in a way that a 12th level paladin is just basically, hi-ho, I'm going to I am going to F you up. And there's very little you can do about it, Mr. the Dragon.
God is on my side.
That paladin's not going to be afraid of the 10 goblins that attack him.
No,
but in Savage
not.
Worlds, one of those that's 10 attack damage rolls that like the goblin's like, oh, I just rolled a 10. Oh, look, another 10. Not looking so tough now, Mr. Paladin. Your toughness 9. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's even in the fear rolls, right? Because it's a very unlikely result. But if you whiff a fear roll badly enough and have to take a roll on the consequences chart and then roll badly enough, it's just like, you have a heart attack. You're dying. You're just flopping there, clutching your heart. And you're going to die in 2 to 8 rounds unless someone succeeds at a difficult healing test. And I'm like, shit, Delta Green's hardcore, but there's no result where a failed sand roll just kills you.
I mean, that's what the bennies are for.
Speaking internally of bennies.
Let's talk about bennies. Yeah. Let's talk about what bennies are.
Can I jump in with a start thing here? Because there's a little aside right at the start. Bennies, and you should all know this is short for benefits. The fuck it is. Bennies it's Benzedrine. It's what bennies is short for. It's amphetamines, and they fulfill largely the same purpose as a general benefit. That's where the word comes from. If you've read any literature from the 30s to the 60s, from the bell jar to the beats, it's
Hunter Thompson.
You gotta stop. You're killing me.
I didn't know Hunter Thompson was a Savage Worlds character.
So it's you pop a Benny and you're fine. You got that extra vim. Yes, it all kind of fits. And it's. I want to know if the Savage Worlds designers are winking at us from the side margins, or if they're playing this straight.
I think they're playing it straight. They're.
Oh God!
I don't know. I've not. Have you met Shane Hensley?
A while ago.
Okay.
I liked him a great deal. Never got to know him.
Okay.
Hold on, I gotta breathe in a bag, guys. Wow, when I said let's talk about bennies, I did not expect that.
No, that's a fair play. Yeah,
I wanted to say my comment about the bennies was that there's a very insightful piece of, it's not game design, but game advice, where he's like, okay, man, just throw these out. Just treat them like water, man. You got to be generous with the bennies, because if you're stingy with the bennies, then they'll be stingy with the bennies, and it'll all just be like, oh no, I gotta save this in case that goblin explodes on me. And if you're generous with them, you will get the fart bet Benny, and that's what you want. You want what this phrase I am just this instant coining, the fart bet Benny. That's what you want.
Yeah.
You want players having narrative confidence. Where they can just say, hey, this would be hilarious. I'm going to Benny that in.
Because that's what gives you good roleplay. These are not Warhammer Fantasy roleplay fate points. These are not to be jealously guarded and brought out only in extreme matters of great duress. These are to be flung around merrily like brightly coloured sweets.
These are your Mardi Gras beads. Yes.
Yeah.
There was some internet post meme that I felt I identified with so strongly, which was, oh, now this potion is very powerful, so you should only use it. Never use it. Got it. I hear you. No, you should use it, but only when you... Nope. I heard you the first time. Never use the powerful potion. Never, ever, ever. That's your glimpse into my psyche.
Yeah.
And so, if bennies are rare, people will just hoard them like a miser, and your benny economy collapses.
Yeah. I have noticed, that a lot of players, my group especially will try to loan bennies out to other players, which I usually allow depending on the circumstance. If someone's trapped, by if their character's off alone scouting out danger, obviously they can't. But like I've been pretty generous with that. I do know also with bennies, if the players have a lot of bennies, you just can't kill the player characters because they can always soak. And because the soak is a flat roll, like even if the goblin rolls a 50 on the damage roll, I'm like, I did 8 wounds to your 3 wound character. I mean, he just has to make one good vigor roll and soak up a lot of
Benny, Benny. Come here, Benny. How you doing? You want a cup of coffee? That is a Brooklyn accent, or my terrible version thereof.
I mean, I could do a better Brooklyn accent. I'm not going to. But I'm pretty sure I could.
Because you respect Brooklyn too much.
That's for the behind the scenes channel. That's for there's too many podcasters in Brooklyn now. Terrifying. The rules overall like really emphasize this particular style of like games where people are facing dramatic situations frequently. So this contrasts with like GURPS, which is also a universal system with a lot of setting books, but GURPS is more even crunchier than Savage Worlds, right? And is often think about how many skills there are in GURPS versus this very abbreviated skill list in Savage Worlds,
which I'm gonna call Advantage Savage Worlds.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, no, GURPS has always had this veneer of reality or realism to it, which it's not. It's just more complicated. But it pretends to be kind of rooted in almost a simulationist style of design, rather than Savage Worlds, which just says it's in the name. This is a two-fisted pulp style adventure with emphasis on the combat. One
is sitting there saying, "Hey, I'm so realistic. Come with me for verisimilitude," and the other's like, "I'm just flashy."
Have you read my space source book? It has very good sections on orbital dynamics.
Yeah, that's GURPS in a nutshell.
And Savage Worlds is I punch the orbital dynamics. How much damage I roll? Oh, it's exploded.
Well, I have an edge for spaceship piloting, so I just roll. I get +2 to my roll. Look, I succeeded. Cool, let's go.
So, Ross, when you ran this, was this online or face-to-face?
Face-to-face.
All right, because
I did not use miniatures.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you still you've got bennies, which are little clicky tokens.
I used
a variety of dice.
Fate tokens for that. Ironically enough, the little.
Man, you crossed the streams.
Fate. Let's go there for a moment. We've talked about GURPS. Let's talk about Fate, which I have to admit I'm not that familiar with. How does this line up against Fate?
So Fate is more focused on narrative, like fiction, in terms of like you don't have like a pre-written list of edges that have specific game mechanics. You have like there are unique abilities, but your characters in the equivalent of edges in Savage Worlds would be called stunts in Fate Core, and those are more like here's some guidelines to make them up, but like it's all like I describe my character with these phrases, these aspects, these stunts. It focuses a lot more on the fate point economy. Like bennies are useful and important, but like Fate has very like anytime you want your characters to build up fate points by playing their aspects, and that's more front and center. Like
I think I'm going to jump in. Yeah. Thank you. That was really clear. I think what we have here is we've got a trinity. In fact, we've got a GNS trinity, the triangle of values that came out of the Forge: gamist, narrativist, and simulationist. GURPS is
simulationist is GURPS.
Narrativist is Fate, which leaves Savage Worlds to be gamist. It's a game. It's very upfront.
Which that fits. And the point I was going to make about playing it at the table is it seems like it would be super tactile because you've got your fate, you've got your bennies, your little pile of those that you're nervously clicking or stacking like poker chips. You've got your dice that you're rolling. You've also got cards. And, if a particular card comes up, you get a fate point. And when you're doing stuff with the dice, oh, wait, no, it's clubs, which means there's a complication. Crap. Oh, no. And so I really like that it has this three-sided aspect to it, that you've got your completely predictable bennies. You've got your somewhat predictable cards. You can, people play cards. People can estimate what the odds of a Joker coming up in a 54 card deck are. And then you've got the dice, which explode. So they're just complete chaos agents. And they all play with each other. They all interact. They all trigger off one another in various ways. And from a design perspective, I'm like, wow, that's a lot of tools in the kit. Or it's a lot of tools that play very well with each other. So if I want to take this generic system and make it specific for, okay, this is a game of, I don't know, horny chefs. Okay, so I'm going to need a cooking mechanic and a horny mechanic. You could very well trigger those off. There's, okay, so, your horniness is all going to be managed by cards, but your cooking is all going to be managed by bennies.
I'm sorry, Greg. I feel like Horny Chefs is a Thirsty Swords lesbian campaign. Like I feel like that's a fake game.
It's Delicious in Dungeon with a slightly different tweak on Delicious.
That's true. Heyo.
Oh no, I got this mayonnaise all over my shirt. Whatever will I do?
Oh, scrape it off and we'll use it in this recipe with the clams that we found.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got a raise on your cooking roll. Yeah.
I am really enjoying Delicious in Dungeon.
Oh, yeah. That's a great series, yeah.
I watched the first few and kind of bounced off it, and I'm like, maybe I should give it another try.
It's not great by any means, but you get drawn into it. And it's just once you appreciate it for its tone, it maintains that tone quite beautifully. And there are moments of great humor that it actually plays quite seriously. Anyway, a digression. Just to jump in.
But I mean, probably relevant to most of our audience. Let's be real here, James.
Just to go back to Bennies for one moment, you were talking about the whole tactility and the thing. The one thing about Bennies that we didn't mention is that the GM also has Bennies for their important characters. Which is that's very gamist. That's the kind of balancing thing. Yep. Because so many games are just like, well, the GM does what they want, pretty much. And occasionally they roll some dice and they make a pretty noise and the GM says what they were going to say before. Games that actually force the GM to abide by a lot of the same mechanics as the players. I mean, there's the much mocked Cinnabar in which notable that the GM had to make notes for the entire adventure, and at the end of the adventure passes those notes to the players, and if the players can find notable discrepancies between the notes and what actually happened in the adventure, they can claim extra experience points from the GM.
I mean, if you want to see that a little more elegantly this is probably the most obscure game I ever think about is Serge Stelmach's Psych. And either you remember this.
Whoa.
What? Did I stump James? All right.
You mentioned it before because it's come up in some episode notes before, and we couldn't find the damn thing.
Of course you can't. It was published in probably like 70 issues of a stapled black and white, maybe 60 or 80 page pamphlet. I don't have my copy anymore, so this could be, you know how time works on the memory of a man in his 50s, but so this could just be a fever dream I had. But what I remember of Psych.
Yeah, they've got an entry for it. No, they don't even have a cover for it, but they do. They note it exists.
So the premise of Psych is there were sort of humanoid dinosaurs of human intelligence with psychic powers that evolved from velociraptors and perceived that the comet was going to cream them. And they're like, shit, let's just use our psychic powers to create a time rift. We'll just fast forward through the wreckage of the KT extinction event, and then we'll resume our control of the world. And when they came out, they're like, where did all these hairless monkeys come from? That's just the setting. So the thing that I was going to refer to with Psych is that when the players get experience points, they give GM points to the GM. For every experience point they get, they give the GM a GM point, and the GM points came in, I think, 3 flavors. And it was like mystery, violence, and some third thing. And so it's like, no, this is what the next session, this is what I want it to be like. I want it to have at least one fight scene. So I'm giving you a violence point. And someone else is like, no, I really like investigation. So I'm putting all my points into mystery. You got to come up with a good mystery for next session. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so unfair to the GM. This is an unbelievable burden. But wow, does it level off that one-sided antagonistic GM player imbalance, right? Because and man, if your GM has the stamina for it, I can see where it would be in some ways a really robust system, just because the players have a feeling that, I am going to get the game I want. I voted for 6 puzzles, and I know next week if I show up for game, I'm going to get my 6 puzzles. What I see with the gamism of SWADE, where, it's like, oh, yeah, well, boy, you guys really hated Lord Snake Hips here, and you're really trying to kill him, but I got 6 pennies. He's out of here. Bye. It does constrain the GM in some ways, too, though, because, instead of the GM just fiats that, I'm sorry, Lord Snake Hips is not taken in by your deceptions. He easily escapes through his title. The GM at least has to spend a bunch of currency to make that happen.
Yes, and at the same time, it's deciding, well, should Lord Snake Hips get out of here, or do we need to save those points to get, Count Giraffe Head out in half an hour's time? Because I've kind of had a half-formed joke and it's gone. It's too late. No. Just a quick note on Psych, on the Noble Knight page, published 1996, 76 pages. Noble Knight have not had a copy in stock for 20 years. So, man, that's
if you can find
rare.
if you find your copy, Greg, you might have the last one.
Last one. Man, I remember tracking Serge Stelmack down because in the early days of Shadis magazine, we were like 2 of the most prolific. We knew the editor, or I knew the editor. Maybe they just really liked Serge, and they're like, "Oh, this Stolze guy seems to hit a deadline." And so, I tracked him down, and he's like, "Oh man, I haven't written game shit in forever. I switched to fiction because it was more reliable, and it made me very sad."
Oh, yeah.
Oh
God, I've done James's job.
That's such a cool story. Yeah, he's on LinkedIn. Living in, he's a VC strategist apparently in Canada.
Time for a Kickstarter.
Oh my God, the world would have been so much better off if he'd kept writing games.
Do you want to mention there are some, you mentioned earlier the tactile stuff, and yes, the players do like, especially like when the die keeps exploding, number go up is always fun. There are some mechanics I don't really I've just discarded them. The card mechanics, because the way the card mechanics work is it just for the initiative system, and there are a few edges, and like you said, if and you just hand out cards to each player, and then you call in from ace all the way down to 2, and the problem is that it's so there. If a player draws a joker, then everyone gets a Benny. That's I think, and there's a couple edges that revolve around drawing a second card or something like that. But other than that, it's vestigial. Like, I feel like it was more important in previous editions. I suspect it was. I have played the Explorers edition, I believe, but that was a long time ago and I don't remember it. And it just...
Did you play with minis?
No, I don't think I've ever played. I think maybe one session with it. Yeah.
Matter more if it is leading more into, if it's more fully transforming into its
I was doing all the combat I was doing was theater of the mind, just and so I was just using
so if you'd busted out the hex paper, son, the cards might have made more sense.
The whole point of using Savage Worlds is I didn't want to go, like, I'd previously run land. If I wanted to do tactical grid stuff, I would have done land. So
no, fair enough.
Yeah, so I feel like that. I wish they had integrated the card mechanics. I feel like there's some potential there for more interesting card mechanics to be integrated into the game, or just to remove them entirely.
Yeah, you're right. It's just an initiative system. And I was surprised actually reading it, how close it is to the initiative system that Grant Howitt and I did, and Paul Dean did in the Paranoia reboot a few years ago, which is also card-based, and also the GM counts down and the players come in. Our version is different. The cards that you play, you choose a card from your hand for your initiative, and it has the action that you perform then. But there's also a bluffing thing that you can go, yeah, I go on 8, but your card is face down. Everyone's card is face down. And people can go, the hell, you've got an 8. And you, oh no, actually I played a 3 by accident. I don't go this time. It's very Paranoia. You're right. It feels very thin for having to bring a deck of cards and shuffle a deck of cards quite often. Every time a Joker comes up, you have to shuffle the deck.
Because cards are so heavy and shuffling is so difficult.
It did slow down to start a combat and then give everybody a card, and then who's got the highest card, and it was just easier to you make a deck or make a whatever they call the agility stat, and if you succeed, then you roll, then you go first. Otherwise, the bad guys go first. That was way faster.
Yeah, but Ross, I think you're right. There may well be something that's maybe left over from an earlier version of the mechanic, because a lot of the game mechanics are named after poker terms. There's wild cards, there's aces, there's raises. And some of these mechanics,
all from Deadlands.
I was going to say some of these derive from Deadlands, but I'd never actually played Deadlands, so I can't comment on how prominent how similar these mechanics are. And I know they're not exactly the same, because there was a Deadlands port with the Savage Worlds mechanic a few years ago. He says, in the early 2000s, there was
a few years ago when the Earth's crust was cooling still.
Yeah.
I'm beginning to see why you have such an affinity with that obscure role-playing game about dinosaurs, Greg.
But
back in my day, you just grab a Triceratops.
Yeah.
So I suspect, it's a vestigial thing, but at the same time, the tactility of it, having cards in your hand, having stuff to play around with on the tabletop, is really pleasing. Particularly for those players, and I'm not casting any aspersions here, with a tendency towards ADHD, or just the tendency to want to have something to do with your hands while you're thinking and excited. And if you've got
this or smoking,
exactly, we don't smoke anymore, and a lot of us, we don't eat as much. We're not allowed to eat as much candy as we used to. So just having stuff you can fiddle with, you can play with, because you've got lovely dice, and you've got tokens as well for your bennies, and you've got cards as well. And
maybe minis.
Yeah, that's a smorgasbord.
Yeah, Deadlands heavily uses the cards. In fact, character abilities are determined by drawing cards. There's a magic. I think they're called hucksters. They're card playing wizards, essentially.
I played first edition Deadlands one time, and it's oh, the huckster's doing his thing. Everyone else gets a bathroom break, I guess.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that was kind of the Shadowrun problem of hacking,
yes,
go play this
it was exactly like that.
Yeah.
But it appears that in the 30 years since then, they've fixed that. So
there have been actually, it looks like the most current edition of Deadlands is 2006, but
oh wow,
yeah,
wow,
I think it's been rolled into Savage World, so there's a Savage Worlds version. Yeah,
scooted it on over
instead of a bespoke system. So I think a lot of these RPGs, trad RPGs with lots of stuff in there, it's about it's more a matter of filtering out, whittling away the stuff you don't want to get the game that you do want.
That is exactly how Rain is now. I specifically say, look, man, if you try and use every option and every rule in here, you'll just go crazy and you won't like it either.
And because I didn't like using the cards, it was very easy, but it was very easy to get rid of them.
Because it's got that hardcore at the center. The central dice mechanic can take a punch.
Yeah.
You can take things away from it and it still keeps moving. You can throw something at it and it won't explosively derail. No, that's true. No, you're right. There's just one other sort of central game mechanic that we haven't really talked about, which are the powers. And I do like them because powers, the way they work, they have a lot of different systems for them, but a lot of the unnatural, supernatural abilities or sci-fi abilities, characters are use powers, but they have what they call power points. And it's simply a mana point system to use your power. You have to spend power points, and you can overcharge your ability, like have your magic spell last longer or do more damage by spending more power points. And you usually have to make a skill check to activate a power. And I really like that it's all, whether it's psychic, abilities or magic spells or whatever, they all use that sort of same system. Yeah. All right. So I can see that there would be a group of players who are like, yes, one mechanic to rule them all. Give it to me and I will drop to my knees and worship. I just want everything to work one way. And then there's another segment who are like, no, I want my scion to have a completely different set of rules from a wizard who has a completely different set of rules from a sorcerer, even though they use the same spell types, who has a different set of rules from the chronomancer, who has a different set of rules from the cleric, who has a different set of rules from the warlock.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to complain about it. If you want to have your specific little playground where it's like, okay, my thing works like this. And someone else is like, well, no, I want to be a wizard and just nerd it out and read books and my thing works like this. That's okay. But also, if you are not into digging deep into finicky subsystems, I can see how having everything... Look, man, everything just works off power points and rolls. It's just power points and rolls all the way down. You're psychic, great. You've got magic powers, great. You've got high technology, great. You're an alien with all this weird stuff going on, great. It's all just power points and rolls, my son.
Well, I mean, in RIPS at least, like they're called psychics use ISP, inner strength points, and wizards use PPE, potential psychic energy. Which are different types of fuel, types of currency. They spin the same, but like you can't, if you like, literally there's a character class that has psychic and magic spells, and he
of course there is.
Yeah, because it's riffs. But like those currencies don't intermix. So like the psychic can't lend his psychic power points
until you get the arbitrage fee.
Yeah, basically. Well, edges. Remember, they're called edges in Savage Worlds. So I do like that. I think it's a fine way of doing it. But like that's the sort of the dual-edged swords. With Savage Worlds, you can do emulate any kind of game setting you want, but it's not going to be as perfect as something tailor-made for that specific setting. So it's
right.
Sort of jack of all trades, master of none. No.
I was going to say, we've got our questions, who plays how and why do they play that way? And part of my why did they play that way is, the people who play Savage Worlds, I would guess, are probably people where it's their favorite system, and also people who have been brought in by someone who had Savage Worlds as their favorite system. That it's they're probably into a second generation now. People who play indie games that are like, okay, I'm going to reinvent a set of mechanics from the ground up because I am specifically doing a game about erotic ambiguity while dating millionaires. Little plug for $1 Million Soulmate there. The game is specifically about this very, very one specific thing in this very specific way and has very specific rules, which you can learn in 10 minutes, but they're different from the game of being drunken cops in a fantasy city, which has, again, its rules for drunkenness, its rules for policing, and its rules for fantasy stuff, and that's all it needs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This system is not weirdly hyper specific enough for the indie crowd who are like, I want to learn. What was the one I played? Desolation. Desolation, despair. It started with a D and it was gloomy. Anyway, the card game where you're creating characters to have terrible things happen to them.
Oh, is it got the see-through cards?
No, that's Gloom.
Yeah, okay.
That's Gloom. It's an entirely different thing.
About bad things happening to people.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's not hyper specific and here, learn these new rules enough for indie, and it doesn't have enough D's and ampersands for everyone else. But for what it does, it's very good at that. And I feel like every 10 years or so, someone's like, wow, why has no one thought of making one game that could do anything, that could do all these different types of genres? And honestly, when I came up with the one roll engine, I wasn't even trying to do that, but I took my run at it and like, oh, well, here's how you do it for science fiction, and here's how you do it for superheroes, and here's how you do it for fantasy. It's been very interesting to look at someone else trying to do the same thing I tried to do and say, oh, wow, well, you came up with a different solution to the challenges than I did. And of course, I prefer my own because everyone always does. But I can see it, and I can see how tight this is, and I can see how it has benefited from being polished in the hands of a bunch of different players and a bunch of different genres, and it's been smoothed out by being used for Day After Ragnarok and 50 Fathoms and all these other different styles that build off the same exploding dice core, but add their own little gloss to it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes, completely. You're absolutely right. It does really have the feel of a system that has been absolutely polished through playtest. The mechanics, everything seems to fit together. Everything seems... This was something else that occurred to me. It feels very balanced as well. It's very customizable. You can do an awful lot with it, particularly, as you said, with the powers. You can build your own character the way you want. What I don't think you can do with this system is min-max. Well, there is not much... There's not much looseness in there to squeeze out a point or two of advantage somewhere. For me, that's a plus. I do not go into these things with a spreadsheet to work out where the optimum build.
Oh, James, you're no fun.
I'm absolutely not.
I feel like the only way to min-max is you'd have to do it for specific settings. Like there's undoubtedly a way to min-max for Savage Race if you understand like which of the guns does the most damage and costs the least credits and that kind of thing.
Please
but
no.
like, but you couldn't do it like in a more customized setting. So to a degree, I think that would be my feeling. My players are certainly not the min-maxer types. They're like one of the advantages of the system is that it's very easy to teach to players who played a bunch of things, but like didn't want to spend days and days learning a more complex system.
Right.
Yeah.
I think actually that's a symbol of good game design in a way that, I've seen people work on their D&D characters, and to the extent of buying obscure third-party source books to get that slightly broken skill that will allow them, to do, and for fuck's sake. Really, if that's what you're in the game for, Warhammer is right there.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I feel like that sort of investment, that degree of I care about this, can be used for good, but it's not innately good.
While researching this episode, I looked at the Savage World subreddit and looked up discussions of SWADE specifically, and people like there was an interesting discussion like, should I switch from Explorer's Edition to SWADE? And people had a very long, nuanced discussion of like, here are the specific differences between the previous edition and this one. Like you can take when you perform a success to unshake, you now act normally, and so like these are very fine-tuned things. So like this is a very mature set of rules.
Yes.
And like people have really like figured out what really makes this system sing. And so that's great. But like the overall structure of Savage Worlds in a lot of ways is like D&D because characters, attributes, skills, but also edges replace like feats, and there's abilities, to replicate spells. There's actually a version of Pathfinder for Savage Worlds. They've converted Pathfinder, the setting, to Savage Worlds. So you can run
I'm
Savage.
shocked. With a feather, you could knock me over.
The structure of Savage Worlds is a way to sort of like wean D&D players off D&D. It's like, look, characters don't have mounds of hit points. You don't have to keep hitting the same monster for 10 rounds. Characters die more quickly.
Like this better.
It's methadone for D&D players, Greg.
That's what I was going to say. I'm like, I want this to be more than the methadone to D&D's heroin. This feels like this was worth doing.
Well, like every time, like, I only play D&D.
I would totally.
And I want to do Cyberpunk in D&D. It's like, no, please, here's Savage World.
You want what you want. You think you want to do Cyberpunk in D&D. What you want is to do Cyberpunk in Savage World.
Yeah, at least Savage World, if not actual Cyberpunk. But we'll get to that.
Okay, so can I ask you guys something?
Mm-hmm.
So throughout the SWADE book, there are examples of characters, and it's Gabe and Red. Mm-hmm. And Gabe is always a bald black man, and Red is always a redheaded woman. Mm-hmm. And they are illustrated very nicely. I like the illustrations. They're very much, this is a very well executed trad game illustration, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes Red's a gunslinger, and sometimes she's a pirate, and sometimes she's a knight. And then it says, if you look on page 208, you'll see me and the players for Gabe and Red. And you look on 208 and, okay, James, Ross.
Yeah.
Are those supposed to be kids who have been getting chemotherapy, or is that just my weird brain operating?
No, I think you're right. I think there's backstory on this. Yeah.
I wondered about the illustration of Red. Gabe I just read as a kid who's shaved his head, but no, you could be right.
I think I remember reading something about Savage Worlds iconic characters being. I want to say that's
actually Googling it.
Yeah, no, there's definitely like a thing about this. I don't remember.
There's a thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about that, and I don't know how I do feel about that.
Well, there's the other thing as well, that these characters talk to you through the book. They're literally handwritten notes, or supposedly handwritten notes, in the margins and at the bottom of columns, which aren't balanced. James,
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. But it's like these characters are talking to you. And I was hoping for a lot more of that, and a lot more insight into ways that the game is played through those comments. But it's lovely to have them. It's the sense that this is not just a dry collection of rules. This is a game that is played and is enjoyed. And then this reveal at the end. I mean, I was surprised, first of all, to find, because they're not just youths. They look young. They look, I would say, pre-teens.
Yeah.
And, which is fine. An awful lot of us started role-playing at that kind of age, but it's
guilty.
Doesn't quite fit with the voice for these people that you've established. And then, as you say, the dynamic just seemed, there's something about the illustration.
It's something for the real fans who've been through multiple editions, probably. I imagine that at some point someone's going to be listening to this and they're going to come to me or hit me on Blue Sky and be like, okay, Stolzy, here's what's up with Gabe and Red. And it started with this, and it's actually kind of a beautiful story and deeply moving. So get your tissues, because here comes the connection between Savage World and juvenile oncology patients. And I'm like, I'm not sure I'm ready for this, man.
Just you say that, but literally while we have been recording this episode, somebody messaged me on Blue Sky with a filling in a point that I had raised in our episode on Bluebeard's Bride, which is what, 2.5 years ago now. It's
nice.
This stuff does happen. And it is great to be corrected and filled in on this stuff. Please, if we are wrong, tell us we are wrong.
Yeah.
What did we do wrong about Bluebeard's Bride? What did you do wrong about Bluebeard's Bride, James?
I said I had never found out why his beard was blue. And apparently it's because he oiled it. And the beard oil back then had a blue sheen, Also, the beard oils were very rich. They were expensive. So it's a signifier of wealth. And I have Sean Cosmo to thank for that.
So if it was in the modern day, this would be hipster beard's bride.
Almost certainly, yes.
Or billionaire beard.
Anyway, but yes, the production of the book itself, I wasn't as blown away by the art as you were. I found some of the pieces are really lovely.
I wouldn't say blown away. I think it's very, very competently done, and there's no artwork where I'm like, oh, that's a dog, that's a stinker.
Polar bear. I hit the polar bear, and it was like, oh no.
Yeah. So if you're a listener, you know the backstory between Gabe and Red, and
excuse me.
Yeah. Please let us know. Yeah.
Please make Greg cry with it.
Yeah. Bits of the art, page 176 is, that is as good as any D&D cover I've seen.
Yeah, that's a good piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a great image, and yeah, definitely would work in.
Or 192 right before the game mastering channel.
Yeah.
Or game mastering chapter.
I might have to screenshot these and put them up in the episode notes. You've not seen the website.
I wonder if they're both by the same guy or gal, or by the same artist. You know what? My first comment when I opened the PDF, the first thing I did was search for Will. And there were only 60 in 212 pages, many of which are not even used badly. So,
okay.
Yeah.
It's got that going for
it. The advanced toolkit chapter was a little looser than everything else, which led me to think it was written by someone else or not edited as many times, but maybe I'm just wrong.
To answer our final question, why people play Savage Rifts, or Savage Worlds, really, not just Savage Rifts, is because I think they want an action-filled game that's not necessarily just grueling dungeon fights, because every combat round in Savage Worlds can be the last combat round, because any attack can be really powerful and really deadly. And so characters, in a sense, are incentivized not to fight, even though most of the rules are about combat, because, well, like, combat is very dangerous. But they still want, like, to have characters each having unique edges and unique game mechanics, and having cool little bits on your character sheet about, like, how your powers work and how your gear works and how your edges work, to get together, have a beer and pretzel game, and have, like, a bit of meta currency. Your character has a little bit of narrative control, so you can, like, no, this is my moment to shine. This is my spotlight time. And with the sheer number of settings and companion books for different genres, horror, fantasy, sci-fi, etc., it's a great toolkit to build, like, that campaign idea you've had, that there's no bespoke game specifically for your avatar, but we're throwing in fantasy stuff too. It's Forgotten Realms meets Avatar. The wizards need unobtainium, and they teleported to the Pandora, and you need to fight all.
Oh, see, I was thinking the other Avatar, The Last Airbender.
Oh yeah, well,
has anyone done?
Oh, he's there too. He's there too. Yeah. There is an Avatar. It's
Avatar meets Avatar.
Yeah, well, there is an
Two
Avatar
avatars,
game.
no waiting.
But that's Magpie's $10 million Kickstarter game. But yeah, that's...
Hey, listeners, could you give me a $10 million Kickstarter game? Because I would really like that. I'm
sure that someone can send you a copy of Avatar.
No. I mean, I want to run a Kickstarter and make $10 million. I would do so much home improvement.
Well, if you can get a license from Nickelodeon, you can probably get, the SpongeBob RPG by Greg Stolze, I think, would be a big seller. But yeah, I think that's why people want to play Savage Worlds, is because it's the best for everyone who's like, oh, I want to run this game, but I'll hack D&D to do it. It's like, no, use Savage Worlds. It's all ready for you. Just grab these books and you're done.
And will probably be more fun.
It is going to be so much easier to turn the ham sandwich of Savage Worlds into the turkey sandwich that you want than it is going to be to turn the fried chicken of D&D into the turkey sandwich that you want.
Yes. It feels set up for that kind of customization, to the extent that it's almost kind of like a not even a toolkit, but just almost a guide to, this is how you start building out games. This is how you start playing with games mechanics as building
a smorgasbord.
I believe I used the word earlier on, but not with that accent.
I don't think you did, James.
I think I did.
I don't think you did.
Well, Well, listeners.
Well, if only it was all recorded, James.
Also, there
We'll
are
find
a
out.
lot of settings for Savage Worlds. I forgot to look at the main page. There are, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's like over 30 settings. There's Deadlands. There's the Goon.
Day After Ragnarok.
Ragnarok. Yep.
Yeah, so it has that thing. If you went into D&D expecting all the fantasy that you've ever heard about and discovered actually no, what you get is D&D style fantasy, and that's really all it serves up, even if you try and rub the serial numbers.
We have both kind of fantasy here, son. We've got
Dungeons and Dragons.
We've got Forgotten Realms, and we've got Planescape.
The other one.
Greyhawk, yeah.
I think Savage Worlds is probably the thing you're looking for, because not just the GM can customize it, but the players can customize it as well to make in a way that is just not possible really with D&D unless you do some serious work to it.
Unless you do enough work that it's only vestigially D&D anymore.
Yes, and I think that's why there's so many home-brewed systems based on D&D, because people have put a lot of work into making it the game they want it to be. And they're thinking, well, maybe other people, I'll show the world. It can be such a better game. And it's not, because it's still basically D&D.
Ouch, James.
Yes.
Oh, I found the polar bear. Okay, yeah, the head looks a little disproportionate, but okay. I've seen worse illos in games, though.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, no, this is, top tier level production, with the exception of the unbalanced columns. And some of the book organization
now
is a
that you
bit odd.
pointed it out.
Yeah, I'd actually like to hear more about the book organization, because I know running the game, it has been like, damn it, where's that thing? Where's that rule again?
There's a sense of, and there's a lot of tables kind of collected. Here's all the things in a single handy table, except the handy table is buried at the end of the chapter, not at the end of the book. So you're going to have to flip through the book to find the quick reference.
Is there a
thing.
GM screen?
Well, there'd need to be a pretty meaty screen. Need to be about 2.5 meters long.
Yeah, I don't prefer using a GM screen myself. I usually there are like handout like things you can print out of like quick rule summaries and stuff like that, and that's what I use. I mean, I think the card mechanic might also be tied in. They do sell what they call adventure decks, and I think they have them for specific settings, which are cards that are playing cards, but they also have like little, pull out an adventure card from the adventure deck to see what complication happens now and that kind of thing. So like maybe some of those adventure card mechanics are to help sell they have accessories. They sell not only dice and Benny tokens, but they also sell cards. So like,
they have an operation like a lot of RPG publishers these days. They have an operation with accessories. But
you got to make money. You got to make the money from something.
It's true. The thing that organizationally that came to is in character generation, which is on page 9. It starts off, and it does throw you straight into the mechanics. There's not a lot of hand holding going on here. It the implication is that you already know what a role playing game is. You know how it works. You know you're going to have to generate a character. Here you go. And there's a nice little click that'll take you to the Pinnacle website, so you can download an interactive character sheet, which is a nice touch. And the headings are concept, ancestry, which is basically your character class, stroke, race, whatever. Hindrances. Okay, you've not mentioned hindrances up to this point. Hindrances are actually a pretty minor point, or they're disadvantages, basically. But no, it's the first page of character generation. There's about 3 paragraphs on it, and then you've got to go about another 20 or 30 pages to get the big section on hindrances. What is that doing here? It's just, it's in the way. You haven't even generated your attributes yet, let alone your skills. Why are you talking about your disadvantages at this point?
Because you have to have disadvantages to buy your edges or to pay off improving your skills and attributes. And I'm not saying this is a good way to do it or how I do it.
But what your skills are, we haven't even talked about how the character is defined.
I don't love that either. It's not what I would have led with. It would not have been it would not have been how I open.
Yeah, I would have talked about the overall shape of a character first of all, usually with the sample character sheet showing how you fill one out.
Yeah, every character has these attributes.
Yeah.
Every character has these skills for free. Now, to make him more special, you can, get these optional skills or these cool edges, like the ones I did for my swole sea captain, I took brute and brawny, and I'm like, well, these fit. And then also, took some disadvantages to pay for them, and that worked out fine. But yeah, maybe it could have been a little smoother, a little more of a pachinko fall.
Yeah, it's not a fatal error by any means. It doesn't make the game unplayable. It just makes it a little more unfriendly for people who are unfamiliar with the system, and perhaps not terribly confident with role-playing. This may be their second RPG. But yeah, another editing pass, I think, could have fixed that. On the other hand, I think there's a lot to be said for keeping the entire book down to 220 pages. For a core rulebook for a modern game, that's really pretty low.
Yeah. Well, for a trad game.
Trad game, yes, that's going up against D&D and GURPS and Fate.
Well, I think it's also, Savage Worlds is doing the modular thing where, like, it's the core book plus whatever you're actually running. Because you can't, it would be very hard to run a game with just the core rules, because there's not really much in the way, aside from making characters in the core rule and the rules, there's not, like, there's no character stat. Well, there's a couple of, like, in the back, there's some monsters statted out, and but like not a whole lot. And like the equipment's a grab bag of modern and fantasy and ancient, medieval stuff. So
almost entirely weapons.
Yeah.
So it's not perfect, and certainly the organization, could definitely.
And the column balance. Won't someone please think about the column balance?
But having several of the supplements,
James, you've infected me.
I'm sorry.
I do like that the supplements have a consistent size and consistent, like, there's no, like, giant source book with a little thin source book. They're all pretty consistent. They're all a nice hardcover. They're actually pretty durable books, too, that, nice. But they're not, like, so fancy and nice that you're not going to want to bring them to the game table and risk, stuff spilling on them or just, the rigors of tabletop play, But yeah, like I said, it's a workhorse of a game, I think is the best way to put it. For, like, it's a great way to sort of play in a fun way where things are larger than life and dramatic, and one size fits most kind of thing. Yeah. So this game fits most ideas, though. But it's but it's certainly not for, like, more nuanced games or more complex games or games where there's a lot of introspection or, like, character development, in the sense, like, the hindrances I don't like, because it's the older version of, you get your hindrance of character creation, get more points, get cool stuff, and then just hope your GM forgets about it and never comes up during gameplay, as opposed to the Fate way of doing that, where your hindrances are how you get your Fate points back. Now, the advice section they have for Benny says, if a player plays up their hindrance, give them a Benny. But it's not, but that's just like a half page.
It's not the rule.
It's advice. And it's not.
And it doesn't have the Fate thing where the GM, slides your Fate point. Is like, I think that your alcoholism just kicked in.
And the player can reject that if they don't want to do that. But yeah, so it's not tightly.
No, I'm clean now, boss.
Yeah, it's tight. Yeah, I prefer flaws that the player, because, like, the GM has enough cognitive load to just keep running the game, right? It's taking up. Yeah, and so, like, trying to keep track of every little player's little quirks is very hard to do, and so putting some of that workload onto the players is a benefit. So
how much work can we make the players do?
Yeah, exactly. More even distribution of gaming labor.
Because James, those players who are hunting down the third party thing to get the slightly broken character skill are probably the same players who, if correctly educated, or if the benefits are shown to them, those are going to be the ones who are like, okay, now I'm going to play out my alcoholism really well.
Yeah, I think, a few stages down the line, there are the ones who just want the numerical supremacy. They want to be the best player in the group, and there's nothing we can really do about them. They are always with us.
They care, and they can grow.
Yes.
They care, and they can grow.
And I was going to say, actually, at the start of this discussion, I would have said, I'm not sure Savage Worlds is the system that's going to help them grow. But then I spotted two things together in my notes. There's a little bit about the networking skill, where there's an example, and networking is basically you network by rolling some dice rather than actually role-playing it. And I was like, oh, for heaven's sake. But then there's interludes. And interludes is what other games would basically call downtime. It's your traveling or whatever else. But there is specifically a bunch of options here for players to tell stories to each other in character about their previous history and exploits and stuff like that. And it's just a page, but it's really nice. And it's not a time when anything else is happening.
And it's right at that. It's like Coyote and Crow.
Yes, that's what it reminded me of. A game I didn't like apart from that mechanic. And it's obviously, I wonder if Coyote and Crow was inspired. It's not a straight lift. Coyote and Crow's mechanic is different and is an evolution of this. But it has the same.
It's really good.
It is. Yeah. But that sense of this is where you add depth to your character. You don't want to be adding depth to your character in the middle of a firefight or in the middle of a tense lock-picking situation or something. You want it at the moment where you can just think of some interesting stories and tell stories to each other and have fun. Those moments where you can just joke around and have fun in character while, the backdrop rolls past. Stagehands are rolling the canvas thing in the past to make it look like you're moving on your wagon train or whatever it is. I was surprised by that as a mechanic and delighted by it as well, which is what I look for in a lot of mechanic design, game design generally. It's charming, it's beautifully executed, and it gave the game a very unexpected level of depth, or a level of depth at least that I wasn't expecting.
My first impression of Savage Worlds years ago was kind of like, especially with the minis and the grid, it's like, oh, this is just fighting and combat and like, not interested. But now,
good realms of fighting.
Yeah, but having run Savage Rifts now for like I think 20 sessions, I'm like, it's a good system for like I can, now that I and the players have internalized the core mechanics well enough, we can kind of like, all right, if you want to do this, you have to roll this, and this is how this is going to go, and players kind of have a sense of like, some players are leveling up or improving their battle skills so they can lead people in battle and organize defenses against enemies and things like that, or they're improving their other skills because of their side quests. Like one player's like, I want to become the best cook in the world in the post-apocalyptic and
the best horny cook in the world.
Yeah, you really. So yeah, it's working. It really is firing on all cylinders now. So it's not a game for everything, but like for anything, if you watched a movie or a cool TV show or an anime or anything with a lot of action, you're like, I want to do that. It's like, well, this is a pretty good fit. It won't be maybe 100%, but it'll get really close. It'll be good enough to bring to the table and teach everybody, and you'll have a great time. So
action movie, the RPG. I think this is a perfect fit.
Yeah. Or and like action, whatever, action sci-fi, action horror. But like action is sort of that is the emphasis on it.
It's got a lot of that.
Yeah, you're not gonna like have the Delta Green slow disintegration of your character's soul as they lose all contact with humanity and then get eaten by a monster.
What was the moment he truly became Heisenberg? Savage Worlds isn't gonna do that, but that's because it's not focused on interior states of being, and not every game has to be or should be.
Exactly. Ooh. Yeah. If that sounds like a good time, I think there's a free quick start guide, so you can just pick that up. And any final thoughts?
Just one note: we were given Greg and I were given review copies of this by Pinnacle Entertainment, which was enormously
Thank you,
kind
Pinnacle.
of them. Many much appreciated. Ross, as you've probably gathered, already has all the books.
No, I only have a couple of them, but I do have the core rules and some of the Savage Rift stuff. And most of the stuff I've been running in Savage Rift has been like, oh, they didn't write anything about this part of Rift, so I get to make it up. Great. And that means this is the end of this episode. Thank you all so much for listening. I believe, looking at our recording order, I think our next episode is going to be Knights Black Agents Double Tap. which is our first supplement. So we previously reviewed Night's Black Agent. I think that was from season 1. So this is a interesting supplement, adding a lot of cool new rules and items and all. Well, we'll find out what's in Double Tap.
Maybe it'll suck, Ross. What do you? I mean, it could.
Yeah, it could. It could. I mean, I guess you'll have to listen to find out. But again, thanks to all the backers who listen.
I think it's unlikely, but yes, thank you, listeners, backers, and well-wishers.
And we'll talk to you next time.
Your company.
Yes, we do. And we'll talk to you next time. Bye.